The first time I met Lyriel, the station alarms were screaming and half the lights were dead. Orbital Station Kepler 9 hung over the gas giant like a wounded animal, its outer rings scarred by recent combat. Humanity had only been part of the galactic concord for 3 years, and already we were known less for diplomacy and more for surviving disasters that should have killed us. I was there as a systems engineer, sent to help stabilize Kepler 9 after a pirate incursion tore through its power spine. Lyriel was not human. She stood taller than me, with silver-blue skin that shimmered faintly under artificial light. Her eyes were faceted like crystal, reflecting colors I couldn't name. She belonged to the Volari, a species famous for emotional restraint and biological precision. They were diplomats, scientists, observers. Physical contact, I'd been warned, was rare and deeply significant among them. So when the deck plating buckled and I fell, it surprised both of us that she caught me. Her grip was firm, impossibly steady despite the tremors rattling the station. For a brief moment, we were close enough that I could feel warmth radiating through her suit. Not heat, presence. She released me almost instantly, stepping back as if she'd crossed an invisible line. "I apologize, human Marcus," she said, voice calm but tight. That action was instinctual. I laughed it off. "Trust me, I'm grateful. Gravity and I aren't on speaking terms today." She studied me then, head tilting slightly. Volari body language was subtle, but I'd been around enough to know curiosity when I saw it. That was the beginning. Over the following weeks, we worked side by side. I rerouted power conduits while she recalibrated environmental systems using technology that still felt like magic to me. We talked about engineering, about Earth, about the Volari homeworld where the sky changed color with emotional resonance. Lyriel asked questions most aliens didn't. "What compels humans to risk themselves for non-kin?" she asked once, as I welded a cracked junction. "Guess we're wired that way," I replied. "If someone's in trouble, it kind of feels like your problem too." She was quiet for a long moment. "That is inefficient," she said finally, "but admirable." Somewhere between shared meals in the dim station galley and long repair shifts in silence, I started noticing things. The way her voice softened when she laughed, rare, but real. The way she lingered when conversations ended. The way her eyes brightened when I talked about the ocean back home. I also noticed the warnings in the Concord manuals echoing in my head. Volari bonds are irreversible. Physical intimacy carries neurological consequences. Which was why the question shouldn't have left my mouth. It happened during a rare moment of calm. The station was stable. The stars outside the viewport burned steady and distant. We stood alone in the observation ring, watching the gas giant churn below us, like a living thing. "Lyriel," I said, before I could overthink it. "Yes, Marcus?" I swallowed. My heart pounded like I was about to step into vacuum without a suit. What if I kissed you?" The silence that followed felt heavier than any emergency alarm. She didn't turn away. Instead, she closed her eyes. "When a Volari is kissed," she said slowly, "it is not a gesture. It is a declaration." I nodded, suddenly aware of how small and foolish I might sound. I figured it wasn't casual. "It initiates a neuroempathic bridge," she continued. "Our minds partially synchronize. Emotions, memories, pain, joy, they echo between us." I forced a weak smile. "Yeah, that's intense." "You would feel my fear," she said. "I would feel your loneliness. There would be no barriers." I opened my mouth to apologize, to say I hadn't meant to cross a line, but she opened her eyes and looked straight at me. "The shock," she said quietly, "is that I have already considered it." My breath caught. "For cycles, I have observed humans," Lyriel continued. You form bonds rapidly, recklessly. You suffer greatly when they are broken, yet you persist. I did not understand why, until I worked with you. I didn't move. I was afraid that if I did, the moment would shatter. You ask what if, she said, stepping closer. But among my people, the question is not what happens if we connect. It is whether we are prepared to change forever. I whispered, "Are you?" She raised a hand, hesitating inches from my chest. That is the shock, Marcus. I am afraid, and I wish to proceed anyway. I nodded, pulse roaring in my ears. So do I. When she kissed me, it wasn't like anything I'd imagined. There was no rush of heat, no spark. Instead, there was understanding. I felt her, centuries of calm discipline, the ache of solitude, the quiet wonder she felt watching humans throw themselves into danger for strangers. She felt me too. My doubts, my hope, the stubborn belief that connection was worth the pain. I staggered, overwhelmed, and she steadied me, her presence anchoring me like gravity itself. When we finally pulled apart, tears were on both our faces. You are loud, she said softly. Emotionally. I laughed through the ache in my chest. Yeah, I get that a lot. The Concord was not pleased. Human-Volari bonds had never been documented. Scientists argued. Diplomats panicked. Protocols were rewritten overnight. Some feared it would destabilize interspecies relations. They were wrong, because through Lyriel, others began to understand us, not as reckless primitives, but as beings who chose connection despite the cost. And through me, the Volari learned that vulnerability was not weakness, but courage. Kepler 9 was eventually repaired. Crews rotated out. Assignments changed. But Lyriel and I remained. Sometimes, we stood together in the observation ring, sharing silence and stars. Sometimes, we argued loudly by Volari standards. Sometimes, we simply held hands, a small human gesture layered over something far deeper. I'd asked a simple question, not fully understanding the consequences. The answer had shocked me, changed me, and bound me to an entire world I'd never known existed. And if I had to ask again, I would, without hesitation. I used to think a kiss was just a moment, a spark, a memory. But with Lyriel, it became a bridge between species, between worlds, between two beings who were never meant to understand each other, yet chose to try anyway. The station lights dimmed as we stood together, her thoughts still echoing softly in my mind, mine resonating in hers. Somewhere beyond the hull, stars burned cold and indifferent. But for the first time since humanity reached the stars, we weren't alone out there. I had asked, "What if I kissed you?" And in doing so, I hadn't just crossed a cultural boundary. I had changed the future of two civilizations with a single, impossible choice.